Oscar Peppit from Netherlands. Oscar, can you hear?
Hi guys. You
Yeah,
see me?
yeah.
Hey, it's nice to meet everyone. Lucas, I was the one who asked about the tour. Very keen to come visit. Looks like an awesome operation, something I really geek out about. Um, Alex has asked me to talk a little bit about how to build a winning culture, and I kind of wanted to adjust that a little bit to talk about how to build in a changing environment for a winning software culture. So let me just share this here. Excuse me. There you go. Can you all see my, what are you seeing?
Yes, we can.
You seeing the deck? Great. Okay. So what I'd like to chat a little bit about today is a little bit about what we do, a little bit about why I do it and where I'm from, and then taking a look down the pipe on what's coming, I think. What does the next 10 years look like from sort of a broad macro market dynamic? And then what does that mean for the types of solutions that you can expect from software and how to actually work with software in the future? So first of all, a little bit about me. I've been in software all my life. I started my first business just before I was 20 years old in software, and actually joined Uber relatively early on in 2012 as one of the first 100 employees. And for the next 8 years, traveled around the world, rolling out 3 of our different software products or different businesses in 5 different continents. So here's a little passport of all the places I've been and kind of what I was working on at the time. Very different types of businesses, but all broadly around this idea of marketplaces. So using a digital layer to connect a whole lot of transactions that are otherwise offline or undigitized or often inefficient, and using software to make the transaction more efficient. And in doing so, basically increase the market and create a lot more opportunities for a lot of businesses to operate on top of a platform. I kind of wanted to take a step back and show you sort of where I play in the material supply chain, because I think up until now we've spent a lot of time talking about harvesting and then primary manufacturing. And we're actually focused on the secondary manufacturing layer. So this is the point at which your panels, planks, and beams become kitchens, furniture, houses, structures, end projects, or end products. We're primarily focused on the custom stuff. So this is the this is the built environment. This is the custom side of interiors and furniture. Anywhere where there is an amount of human labor required in the designing, the error checking, the work preparation, or the delivery of a particular product with wood. This market is very big. One of the most interesting things about the wood industry is it's a lot harder to find really good information about how big the global combined value of the wood industry is versus, say, the steel industry or concrete or other equivalent industries. And there's a couple of reasons for why that is. But, you know, the first one is really it's the only sort of building material commodity that's grown, not produced. And so your inputs are a little bit more all over the place. We're growing wood in lots of different places. Unlike precision manufacturing industries, primarily end structures often are concerned a lot more about about look and feel for a given amount of tolerance than tolerance being the most important variable that goes into the design of something versus, say, a jet engine or a skyscraper. And so historically, that's led to quite a high degree of market fragmentation. Although, we've heard from some very big businesses here today, and of course, there's, the IKEAs of the world and there's multi-billion-dollar development firms. The reality is the majority of businesses that operate in this industry are SMEs, small to medium-sized businesses. And I've seen variations on numbers, but as much as sort of 80% of the revenue in this industry is generated and flows through SMEs. So this is as a result of how this material is made, how it distributes around the world. It's living. It's the world's oldest material. It is a small business relationship. And so what that means is everybody's trying to get a better view. And I think you've heard elements of this from different speakers today, but The supply chain isn't exactly a clean flow. Plenty of different partners are seeking to work with other different types of partners. There's a lot of vertical integration. There's sawmills who also do brands. That's quite a popular model in Italy, for example. There are brands that also do their own distribution. There are others that work through dedicated distributors. There are value-added manufacturers who make the furniture and the say interiors or even structural elements and full projects that are sometimes integrated as design and build firms, sometimes build only, sometimes design only, and work with a network of OEMs. And then there's even layers of B2B clients. So where we would normally in the wood industry consider the end market, the truth is there's often 2 to 3, sometimes 4 more layers before your product even gets into the home or to its final location. And so there's a lot of information there that's actually very, very useful at scale. And you've heard a lot of the discussion around what is the point of this data, and sort of what's the utility of measuring it versus the trade-off of getting it. And I can talk a little bit of that with some of my anecdote from time at Uber. And I can also talk about what we're working on at Cutr. But essentially, a lot of the people who are making things want to know what clients are asking for. So the most extreme example of this is, would foresters be better served by better information on what to grow, or what price to expect in the future, essentially, a futures market. You can kind of think of this in terms of traction. Clients, as in the ones at the other end of the supply chain, they want to know with much more transparency and much more immediately, what are the inputs that go into the cost decisions that affect their outcomes, their end product. So clients are often asking for, 5 different quotes with 5 different materials. They want to know what design decisions they've made lead to what cost outcomes based on the supply chain. And frankly, they often get quotes and information that is hugely conflictive and very slow and expensive to collect because a lot of that information is generated manually. And so there's a real need for transparency as you get towards the front end of the supply chain. And then finally, all the way back to the beginning, we kind of all want to know about how to react to market movements and what we can best do to set ourselves up for the future. And so there's actually a lot of businesses that play off this theme. And there's a lot of software that's traditionally sold that hasn't taken a view on this theme. And my argument in this presentation is going to be that future software companies, in part, are going to be responsible for helping people collate and collect this sort of information and help people make better decisions, and sort of can't afford to just sell a piece of software and then sit back and buyer beware. As well, a lot of big businesses want to future-proof, but a lot of small businesses don't want their information to cost money to generate. And so importantly, there is a utility of information curve, which a lot of other speakers have spoken about already. So I kept this presentation a little bit more sort of data light because I think there's been a lot around that. But when we're talking about frameworks, I wanted to keep this as simple as possible. Here are sort of 3 broad global trends that we would expect to see over the next 10 years that are going to sort of really, really upend some of the traditional ways that we think about doing business in this industry, but in other ways actually provide a huge amount of opportunity. So the first is environmental rate of change. So, climate change is clearly happening. Any grower will tell you that. There's things that we can do to be more inured from that or less inured from that. I sort of grew up very close to farmland Australia. A lot of friends dealing with a lot of different impacts and trying to future-proof against how to think about future of environment. And a lot of farmers, don't traditionally think of farmers as being market entrants for the forestry industry, but they in fact are. They are in fact potential entrants to the industry. But what they need is data, and they need support, and they need to know to some extent that someone's willing to help them build that business. And traditionally, I think services at that end of the industry have been kind of light, but with an increase in environmental rate of change, we are going to see an increase in both threats and opportunities. How that's going to hit us is probably a little bit of what we saw in sort of 2021, 2022. You're going to start to see rapid price input volatility. And that the reasons for that volatility are just going to get more varied, and the rate of volatility the periodicity is going to decrease, as in it's just going to get more regular. Importantly, however, though, and we're seeing this in Europe primarily, and I think this is shaking out over the world in some sort of delay, but you're seeing a lot of demand tailwinds. So government level decisions on percentages of new builds that are required to be built out of sustainable materials, circular economy initiatives and grants, and a lot of other kind of outcome driven intentions from government level down are going to really rapidly affect the rate at which demand increases for wood products. And of course, then the question becomes, how does supply adapt to meet some of that demand? The second big area that I think we're all sort of noticing in different ways is a steadily but slowly eroding global supply chain. Now, there's a number of reasons for that. I think there's an argument to be made that global supply chain has historically been underwritten by America, and they are withdrawing from that stage a little bit in certain parts of the world. Certainly, Australia has seen some of this recently when we think about our exports and how those exports have been affected by some of the tension in that part of the world. We are also just seeing the cost of transport becoming more variable. Now, haulage is traditionally much more affected immediately by changes in, say, oil supply than shipping. But shipping has also been, to some extent, affected over the last 5 years. And then there's just some weird moves that are coming out of, Saudi Arabia when it comes to distribution of oil supply. And as a lot of people agitate all at once, that sort of thing also increases your volatility. So as global supply chain becomes a little less secure, typically what you tend to see is an increase or a decrease in outsourcing, an increase in onshoring, an increase in distributed production. Now, the good news for the wood industry on the whole is that wood, by virtue of the fact that it grows everywhere and it's mostly small to medium business, it is already largely set up for distributed production. And by distributed, you could mean sub-regional, for example. But the relative benefit of moving, say, precision high-value goods around the world and shipping them all out of China versus wood is much larger. And so there's much more of a playing field for lots of different types of businesses to be competitive with each other within a region, as opposed to worried about getting to a certain size and everything being globally outsourced. And then finally, what you're likely to start seeing is a little bit of business model flux flex. So what I mean by this is business models that are traditionally played in one space might attempt to move a little bit into the value chain. Historically, I think what we're seeing recently in the wood industry is primary producers of goods, panels, planks, and beams, starting to move into value-added work in an attempt to maybe thicken margin on some activities and get slightly more complex. And so moving into component work, that sort of thing. That's sort of been the trend in the last 20 years, given the increased availability of machinery and software. And then finally, this is kind of the big dark horse, and you've heard some mention of it today. I have worked in AI first and AI centric companies for the last 10 years. And I myself have been shocked by the rate of change and the sudden increases in functionality across a number of different domains, not just the sort of domains that are newsworthy when it comes to AI. So AI is not necessarily, the big scary world ending thing that a lot of people are worried about. But it is actually having a very rapid impact across a number of different industries in a lot of different places where you would think historically computers just probably weren't a great place to find efficiencies. So all else being equal, that's going to increase the rate of change. But I actually want to focus here on thinking of this as the cost of automation is going to decrease itself. And so it has never been easier to start a business. There are some hard inputs here that companies are, especially in this industry, affected by, right? Like distance you need to travel a product, physical product, rate at which you can grow it, rate at which you can produce it. All those things can sort of hit constants. but a lot of the white collar work and a lot of the sort of repetitive but human-centric activity that historically you've needed a workforce to do. The example that we focus on specifically is quoting and pricing, which historically has been teams of dozens or hundreds of people at large companies, because the cost benefit of getting that right is so high, is increasingly open to automation. And so there are opportunities there. Now, obviously, this is going to mean, there's a lot of retraining required. And there are certain places around the world that are better or worse set up for that. But importantly, this also presents an opportunity for revenue per employee to increase. And it doesn't just increase because the amount of employees you have maybe is less, but it frees up your employees from repetitive work to focus on the next level of work. And I can talk about that a little bit later. But as we automate more of the things that historically you've needed people to do, it actually opens up a lot of different opportunities for businesses to take a step forward and think about what they're going to do next. And so putting this into a set of new principles, I was asked to basically land on some pillars for software success, or a successful software culture. And summarize it as this. Here has been my experience as someone whose co-founder has been in this industry their entire life and working alongside them to build a business that helps people in this industry. The state of software in this industry is behind where a lot of other industries are. And that is both not great for a lot of people in the industry, but it is actually a huge opportunity for a lot of people to quickly improve a lot of things. And I think what it takes is, to some extent, the problems you're trying to solve with software and the model in how you get paid for solving that problem affect the culture of software in an industry proper. And so what we historically notice in a lot of places in the industries that work with wood, and this also extends to construction, I think, which historically has been also a low innovation industry when it comes to software improvement, is we're still operating on a model of paying for software that has largely become antiquated in a lot of other industries. So the idea of paying for upfront license fees is still very much a thing that a lot of people are used to, right? And especially if you're doing a large integration, you could be paying 500 to $1 million for an integration to just hope that the thing works. And there's a little bit of buyer beware on that, often because businesses are so individual in this industry. The second sort of historical trend here is that on-premise has been a sort of preferred solution for software. And on-premise has a lot of benefits, especially where a lot of it was adapted historically in high security industries where you needed to maintain all of your data on site. But increasingly, on-premise does not confer a competitive advantage, and it actually creates more issues than it solves in a lot of situations. And so increasingly, a lot of businesses can supercharge their own business by connecting to other businesses and sharing a lot of that data. And so on-premise is sort of, to some extent, one of those trends where it kind of affects the software culture that you have with your business. The third piece here is proprietary data formats. So we are still in a series of industries that work in the same way that you could argue Photoshop worked in 1996, which was buy a software license, have a proprietary Adobe Photoshop file format that moves between files on your computer, and you can't open it with anyone else's software. And again, this increasingly becomes a limiting factor when you think of the rate of improvement on AutoCAD products, or a lot of sort of large historical, in fact, a lot of the distribution of ERP products as well. You'll notice that a lot of them are still sort of set up in a way that prohibits the sharing of information as opposed to enables it. That's not true for all of them. And actually, there's quite a lot of industry focus and industry leaders now working towards thinking about API first, integration and collaboration centric software. The point I want to make here is that linear operations has historically been how products get made in the CAD industry. And what I mean by this is we started off with drawing. So drawing the thing that we wanted to design. And then that kind of became modular. So we designed modular systems. Then it became, to some extent, configurable. And then configuration itself became parametric. And so what I mean by that is today you can go onto IKEA or a Tilco or you can use EMOS software or any of these other pieces of configuration software, and you can plug in what you want, and it will based on a series of pre-fills fill that out for you. That's probably going to go away fairly quickly. And one canary down the coal mine for this is the gaming industry, actually, because they solve a very similar problem. They're trying to rapidly generate geometry that behaves based on physics. And that's essentially what every designer is trying to do, often with CAD, at the point where they get to design for manufacturing. And so we're likely to see solutions become a lot more generative. And that means you're plugging in ideas for how something could look. And I was experimenting with this just the other day, using a number of different off-the-shelf free LLM solutions to basically behave as if they were my interior designer. And they were pretty serviceable at designing me an entire floor plan. And so a lot of the traditional ways of designing and generating these designs is going to become something more generative and more AI assisted.
Sure, thank you for, sorry for interrupting, but we have to, sum up your presentation and jump to other speaker.
1 minute?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the point I want to leave you with. A lot of these present opportunities for us to move towards a new type of software model that you get paid for, or you only pay for as it actually solves problems or generates revenue for your business. We're moving towards a market where the more plugged in your business is and your solution is with other businesses, and I think you'll hear this from some of the other speakers, the more you benefit from that, the more leads come your way, the more you're an active participant in the marketplace. And then finally, things that we normally needed to spend a lot of repetitive time on are very quickly going to go away, and the cost of automating those things is also going to decrease. And that presents a huge opportunity for us to rethink how we do all of those things. So the last thing I'll leave us with is this isn't really about competition within the wood industry. This is about the wood industry's competition versus other material supply chains. Other material supply chains get chosen as materials of choice for a lot of use cases because people don't know enough about how to work with wood. 15 years ago, tallest building in the world out of wood was a lot smaller than it is today. And there's even plans to go up to sort of 70, 80 stories. And so the TAM for wood is increasing, and it will increase commensurate with its ability to generate efficient gains. So I can talk a little bit more, but maybe I stop there and then we can save some for question time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think if you have a slide with your contacts, you can go to that slide, and the attendees, they can capture that screenshot and contact you later.
Sounds good.
So I think Cutr.ai is a pretty interesting startup in the wood industry. So please visit their website and take a look what they're doing. And I think it might be a really bright star on this end. So we'll see. So thank you, Oscar, for your presentation.